People always talk about power creep and how it's hurting the future of Pokemon Go. And I acknowledge that Pokemon are getting really strong. Like yeah, the legendary dogs are broken. But when talking about power creep, people are always talking about the present and the future. I think it would be really interesting to look back at the past and see how power creep has evolved over the years. Pokemon Go came out in 2016, so let's look back on each year and figure out what the strongest Pokemon was by the end of each of them. If you end up liking this video, maybe think about subscribing. I really want to hit 1,000 subscribers, and each of you hitting that button helps me out a ton. I really appreciate all of you, and let's start with the strongest Pokemon of 2016. Everyone remembers this year, especially this summer. We've all seen the videos of crowds of people running for wild Charizards or Snorlaxes, but one Pokemon was the most hyped by far, the infamous Wild Dragonite. This Pokemon's reputation doesn't come from nowhere. Besides being an awesome looking dragon, this Pokemon has a DPS or damage per second of 15.16 and a TDO or total damage output of 337.05, making this the most powerful Pokemon at the end of 2016. 2017 brought us two major things. 1. Generation 2, the Johto region. And 2. Raid battles, a new way to catch rare Pokemon. The strongest Pokemon that was released in the Johto region is Tyranitar, coming in with a DPS of 14.82 and a TDO of 368, making it slightly stronger than Dragonite. Though of course, the introduction of raids, and with them legendary Pokemon, made far more of an impact than any of the Pokemon from the Johto region. The first ever legendary Pokemon released was Articuno, but not even 2 months later, a Pokemon would release that people are still talking about to this day, Mewtwo. With a DPS of 18.39 and a TDO of 386.60, Mewtwo firmly takes its place as the strongest Pokemon of 2017. The fact that it's still relevant 9 years later just goes to show how powerful it really is. 2018 releases Generation 3, the Hoenn region, and all of its legendaries, the strongest of which being Rayquaza. But what's important to note is that this is the base form Rayquaza, and it did not have access to Dragon Ascent. So at least in 2018, Mewtwo is still the stronger Pokemon. We also saw the release of about half the Sinnoh region and a few of its legendaries, none of which were able to overthrow Mewtwo as the strongest Pokemon of 2018, giving Mewtwo the win for the second year in a row. 2019 releases the other half of the Sinnoh region, and with it, Garchomp, who has a DPS of 16.07 and a TDO of 395.66, closing the gap on Mewtwo, but not quite surpassing it. Another interesting Pokemon that came out is Regigigas, which has a high DPS nowadays because of Crush Grip, but did not have access to that back in 2019. Since no other Pokemon of note were released in 2019, Mewtwo takes the win for its third year. Will it be able to keep up its reign next year? "2020 saw the release of a bunch of Generation 5 Pokemon, including Zekrom and Reshiram, who each boast about 16 DPS and 390 TDO. Still not quite enough to topple Mewtwo's reign. The year before Team Rocket and Shadow Pokemon started to come out. I didn't mention it then because none of them were even close to taking Mewtwo's place. The first Shadow Legendary Pokemon was Articuno, and then Zapdos. Both of these Pokemon were extremely powerful, but Mewtwo still held firm. Until the third legendary Pokemon came out, Shadow Moltres. With stats of 19.09 DPS and 322.07 TDO, it's very close, but the win is going to Moltres because of that crazy high DPS. But then, in mid-2020, he returned, Mewtwo, this time in his Shadow form. With a crazy high DPS of 21.77 and a TDO of 381.43, Mewtwo returned to the throne, this time as Shadow Mewtwo. "2021 is here, and now Niantic is realizing that they're running out of regions to add, so Pokemon are releasing slower than before. Mythicals like Meloetta and Hoopa are released, but Shadow Mewtwo is unrivaled. Some more Mega Pokemon are being released after they debuted the year before, but nothing comes anywhere close to Shadow Mewtwo. Not much to say about 2021, other than that Shadow Mewtwo still remains king, giving Mewtwo its spot as number 1 for the 5th year in a row. (2022) releases most of the Alola region, alongside Ultra Beasts, the strongest of which being Kartana, with 17 DPS, not even close to Shadow Mewtwo. The big thing that 2022 brought was the release of legendary Mega Pokemon, the first being Latios and Latias. Latios is the stronger of the two, with a DPS of 19.43 and a TDO of 473.14. Its TDO is way higher than Shadow Mewtwo's, but since DPS is a more important stat for raids, Shadow Mewtwo remains number 1. How much longer will Mewtwo be able to stay at the top? (2023) was a huge year for Pokemon Go. For one, Paldea started to release, before Galar for some reason. But Paldea isn't what's exciting about 2023. In February, the Hoenn debuted some extremely powerful Pokemon, Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon. They're both almost identical stat-wise, but Kyogre has a slightly higher DPS and TDO. What are they, you may ask? Primal Kyogre has a DPS of 19.42 and a TDO of a staggering 596.73. Because again, DPS is a more valuable stat for raids than TDO, this year is going to result in a tie between Shadow Mewtwo and Primal Kyogre. Psych! On August 4th, 2023, a Pokemon would release that would make history, Mega Rayquaza. This absolutely busted Pokemon has a DPS of 26.05 and a TDO of 661.15, absolutely destroying the competition. If you were tired of seeing Mewtwo sitting at number 1, don't worry, because Rayquaza has yeeted Mewtwo off that spot. Okay, so last year we went from a previous record of 21 DPS all the way up to 26. 2024 is going to have some insane releases to compete. Right off the bat, the Sinnoh introduced some powerful Pokemon, Origin Form Palkia and Origin Form Dialga. Both of these Pokemon hover around 19 DPS and 400 TDO, which isn't even close to Mega Rayquaza. GoFest released Duskmane and Dawnwing's Necrozma. They both released with DPSs of 22.16 and TDOs of 521.91, which is closing the gap, but we still have a far way to go. Is Mega Rayquaza even beatable? (2025), our last full year of Pokemon Go. Let's see what was released. Again, the tour in February starts us off with a bang, with Black and White Kyurem. Black Kyurem has stats of 21.16 DPS and 507.85 TDO. Unfortunately, this isn't enough to pass Rayquaza, but at least the tour events seem to always release bangers, right? Let's look at GoFest, which gave us some dogs, Zacian and Zamazenta. Zamazenta having a slightly lower DPS of 21.87, but a TDO of 647.88, making it stronger overall. Mega Rayquaza, of course, still completely wipes the floor with it, but at least we're getting closer to passing it. Eternatus came out a few months later with even better stats of 23.04 and 619.02, but still, nobody can pass Mega Rayquaza, making it the strongest Pokemon of 2025, and with that, Mega Rayquaza wins the title of the strongest Pokemon at this current time. Oh, it looks like Mewtwo's calling. He says he's going to take back his spot this summer, just you wait. If Mega Mewtwo Y does come out, and it most likely will, it will have a DPS of 25.73 and a TDO of 731.34, taking the spot as Pokemon Go's strongest Pokemon.